Ambassador Jinho walked into the massive chamber where leaders from across the galaxy gathered. The room sparkled with lights from 1,000 different worlds. He wore Earth's formal robes, and every eye in the room watched him carefully. The council speaker, a being made of shimmering light, spoke first. Ambassador, we called you here to talk about your complaints. You claim something happened 3,000 years ago. Surely you understand that such old events should be forgotten by now. Jinho stood quietly for a moment. Then he smiled, but it was not a friendly smile. Forgotten? You think we should forget? A tall alien with 4 blinking eyes stood up. He was from the Zytherian Empire. Ambassador, yes, there was trouble between our peoples long ago. But that was 3,000 years in the past. Our own records from that time are incomplete. We barely remember what happened. You must move forward, not live in the past. Jinho touched the device in his hand. Suddenly, images appeared floating in the air all around the chamber. Pictures of beautiful ships flying through space. Pictures of families smiling. Pictures of people who had been dead for millennia. Let me tell you what humanity remembers, Jinho said calmly. The year was 4791. Your warships met our first colony fleet. We sent 147 ships to the stars. They carried 40 million people. Men, women, and children looking for new homes. The images changed. Each ship appeared with its name written below it. The New Dawn carried 12,000 colonists. The Soul's Blessing carried 16,000. The Terra Nova carried 22,000. Jinho's voice grew stronger. The Horizon's Promise. The Freedom's Flight. The Tomorrow's Child. The Eastern Star. He kept speaking, naming ship after ship. The chamber became completely silent. Everyone listened as he continued without stopping, without forgetting a single name. 40,237,819 humans, Jinho finally said. We remember every single one of them. The Zytherian representative stared at him in shock. Now the floating images changed again. Thousands of faces appeared in the air. Young and old. Happy and serious. All dead for 3,000 years. Park Minji, age 7. Kim Taeho, age 43. Lee Soo-hyun, age 19. Jinho spoke their names. We know where they were born. We saved their last messages before your weapons destroyed them. We kept their children's drawings. Their poems. Their songs. We preserved everything. A council member from another world whispered in disbelief. How is this possible? No species keeps such detailed records for so long. No species except humanity, Jinho corrected. While you forgot your own histories, we remembered ours. Every single day for 3,000 years. The Zytherian spoke up, his voice uncertain now. Even if this is true that government no longer exists, we are not responsible for what our ancestors did. You cannot blame us for ancient crimes. Jinho's cold smile returned. Can't we? He showed new information. 17 days ago, your warships attacked the Minarian colony. You used the same tactics you used on us 3,000 years ago. The same strategies. The same excuses. Shocked voices filled the chamber. The Minarian representative quickly checked her own records and nodded. It was true. You didn't forget how to kill, Jinho said. You only forgot that you had done it before. You forgot there would be consequences. You forgot someone was keeping count. The council speaker's light flickered nervously. What are you saying, Ambassador? Jinho placed a small crystal on the table. It projected Earth's military symbol. I am delivering a message, he said quietly. Humanity never forgets. We waited 3,000 years. We built our fleets. We studied your weaknesses. We positioned our forces. We waited for you to prove you learned nothing. He looked directly at the Zytherian. At this moment, 47 human battle fleets are appearing at every one of your military bases. We know everything about your defenses because we have been watching for 3,000 years. This is war, the Zytherian shouted. No, Jinho said coldly. War started 3,000 years ago when you murdered 40 million of our people. Today we are simply finishing it. The debt comes due today. We are humanity. We remember. And retribution begins now. The display suddenly showed space around the Zytherian home world. Human warships were appearing everywhere, like ghosts rising from the past. The galaxy was about to learn that humanity never forgot anything. Fleet Admiral Hyojin stood on the bridge of her flagship, the Eternal Memory. Through the massive windows, she watched as hundreds of human warships emerged from dark space. They had been hiding there for months, waiting for this exact moment. All ships report ready, Admiral, her second officer said. Hyojin nodded slowly. She touched the small locket around her neck. Inside was a picture of a woman who had died 3,000 years ago on the colony ship called Dawn's Hope. That woman was her ancestor 150 generations removed. Every person in Hyojin's family since that day had joined Earth's military. Every single one had trained for this moment. "Begin the operation," she commanded. Across 47 star systems, human fleets activated simultaneously. What the galaxy had thought were peaceful merchant ships suddenly transformed. Their cargo bays opened to reveal weapons. Their civilian crews were actually trained soldiers. For 3,000 years, humanity had been hiding warships in plain sight. On Earth, in the Great War Room, President Deho watched the tactical displays. Beside him stood General Yuna, head of strategic planning. "The Zytherians have no idea what's coming," Yuna said quietly. "They think we're a peaceful species. They think our merchant fleet is just traders." Deho looked at the screens showing human trade stations throughout Zytherian space. Every single one was actually a military base. Every human diplomat had been gathering intelligence. Every cultural exchange had been studying enemy tactics. 3,000 years, Deho said. "How did we keep this secret for so long?" Yuna smiled grimly. "Because we're patient. Because we remember. Every human child learns about the massacre in school. Every family keeps records of their lost relatives. We never stopped preparing, not for one single day." The displays showed Zytherian military bases. The humans knew everything about them. They knew which bases had weak shields. They knew which commanders made mistakes under pressure. They knew the exact layout of every enemy warship because human spies had been gathering information for centuries. Back on Hyojin's flagship, the attack began. Human ships moved with perfect precision. They didn't fire randomly. Every shot hit exactly where it needed to. Zytherian defense stations exploded before they could even send distress signals. "Target the military shipyards at Sector 7, Hyojin ordered. "Avoid all civilian areas. This is about justice, not murder." Her weapons officer acknowledged. The human fleet had strict orders. They would destroy military targets only. No civilian casualties. Humanity would not become the monsters they were fighting against. On the Zytherian home world, panic spread through their command center. Admiral Kess watched in horror as human ships appeared everywhere at once. "How did they get past our sensors?" he shouted. "Where did all these ships come from?" His intelligence officer pulled up reports, his hands shaking. "Sir, our analysis shows these ships were always here. These are the merchant vessels we've been trading with for centuries. They were warships the entire time." Kess felt cold. "That's impossible. We inspected those ships." "They let us inspect what they wanted us to see," the officer replied. "Sir, they know everything about us. Look at this." He showed tactical data. "They're hitting our weakest points. They know our defense codes. They know which bases have supplies and which are almost empty. They've been studying us for 3,000 years, Kess finished quietly. He remembered the human ambassador's words in the council chamber. He had thought it was just talk. Just drama. Now he understood. Humanity had meant every word. On another human ship, Captain Miho received reports from his ground teams. "Sir, the Zytherian military archives are secured. We're downloading everything." "Good," Miho replied. "Find proof of every crime they've committed. The galaxy needs to see what the Zytherian Empire really is." The human forces moved like a machine built over centuries. Every soldier knew their role perfectly. Every ship captain had studied these battle plans since childhood. This wasn't just a military operation. This was the conclusion of 3,000 years of preparation. Hyojin watched as another Zytherian military station fell. She opened her locket again, looking at her ancient ancestor's face. "We didn't forget," she whispered. "We promised we would come for you. And we kept that promise." Across the galaxy, other species watched in shock and fear. They had thought humanity was weak and forgiving. Now they realized the truth. Humanity had never forgiven. They had simply been waiting. And that patience made them the most dangerous species the galaxy had ever seen. The Zytherian defense fleet scrambled to respond, but they were already too late. Human warships surrounded their largest military base at the edge of their territory. Commander Sun Wu watched from his strike cruiser as the enemy tried to form battle lines. "They're moving into Formation Delta 7, his tactical officer reported. Sun Wu smiled. "That's what we expected. They used the same formation against our colony ships 3,000 years ago. Send the counter-strategy." The human fleet moved in a pattern that seemed impossible. They knew exactly where the Zytherian ships would be before they got there. Every enemy movement had been predicted decades ago. Human historians had studied every battle the Zytherians ever fought. They knew their tactics better than the Zytherians knew themselves. On the Zytherian command ship, Admiral Kess watched in growing horror. How are they doing this? It's like they can read our minds. His second officer checked the data. Sir, they're not reading our minds. They already know what we're going to do. Every defensive move we make, they counter it instantly. Kess tried a different strategy. He ordered his ships to break formation and scatter. But the human fleet had already moved to block every escape route. It was like fighting ghosts who knew the future. Then something strange happened. Every Zytherian communication channel began broadcasting the same thing. Voices. Old, crackling recordings of humans speaking. This is Captain Lee Juno of the colony ship Eastern Star. To whoever finds this message, please tell Earth we tried our best. Tell them we. The recording cut off with the sound of explosions. Another voice began. Mom, Dad, this is Minji. I'm scared. The ships are firing at us. Why are they doing this? We didn't do anything wrong. More explosions. More silence. The broadcast continued. Hundreds of voices. Final messages from 3,000 years ago. The last words of people who died in space, far from home, crying for help that never came. My name is Kim Soo-hyun. I'm 19 years old. I wanted to be a doctor. I wanted to help people. If anyone hears this. Kess shut off his communicator, but his crew had already heard. Some of them looked sick. These were the voices of people their ancestors had killed. Ghosts speaking across 3,000 years. Sir, incoming transmission from the human fleet, his communications officer said quietly. Kess accepted it. The face of Admiral Hyojin appeared on his screen. Behind her he could see walls covered with names. Millions of names. Admiral Kess, Hyojin said calmly. Every person in my fleet has memorized at least 100 names from the massacre. Would you like to hear them? Before Kess could respond, every human ship began broadcasting. Not threats. Just names. Thousands of human voices speaking the names of the dead. Park Minji. Kim Taeho. Lee Soo-hyun. Choi Hana. Young Yuna. On and on, a river of names flowing through space. Stop, Kess said weakly. Please stop. We will never stop, Hyojin replied. For 3,000 years we spoke these names. We taught them to our children. We wrote them on monuments. We sang them in songs. You forgot them. We did not. A young Zytherian officer at a distant base tried to access his own people's historical records. He wanted to know if this was true. What he found shocked him. The massacre was mentioned in only one brief paragraph. No details. No names. Just a note about territorial dispute with humans that ended in acceptable losses. He looked at his fellow officers. Did you know about this? Did any of you know what our empire did? They shook their heads. Their own government had erased the truth. The Zytherians had forgotten because they wanted to forget. They had buried their crimes and moved on. But humanity had kept every detail alive. More Zytherian bases began surrendering. Not because they were defeated militarily, but because they finally understood what they were fighting against. They were fighting memory itself. Fighting the accumulated weight of 3,000 years of grief and anger and perfect, terrible patience. Young Lieutenant Mincio, barely 25 years old, stood at his post and read reports. He had been born millennia after the massacre. He had never hurt any human. But when he tried to surrender, his commander refused. We fight until the end, the commander ordered. But why? Mincio asked. Our ancestors committed this crime. Why should we die for it? The commander had no answer. Hyojin watched another Zytherian base explode. Not destroyed by human weapons. The Zytherians had activated their self-destruct rather than surrender. She felt no satisfaction. Only sadness. Even now they chose death over admitting the truth. Keep broadcasting the names, she ordered. Let the galaxy hear them. Let everyone know why we're here. And across space the ghosts continued speaking. The war room on Earth fell silent as President Daeho read the message. Young Zytherians, those born long after the massacre, were begging for mercy. They had discovered the truth about what their ancestors did. Now they wanted to surrender, to seek asylum with humanity. What do we do? General Yuna asked. These people are innocent. They didn't commit the crime. Daeho looked at the faces on the screen. Young soldiers, barely adults. Children even. None of them had been alive 3,000 years ago. None of them had fired the weapons that killed 40 million humans. Call a council meeting, Daeho said. Let humanity decide. Across Earth and her colonies the debate began. In schools, in homes, in government halls, humans argued about justice and revenge. Professor Juno taught history at the Grand Archive. He stood before his students, many of whom had family members fighting in the war. The question is simple, he said. Do we punish children for their parents' crimes? Do we punish great-great-great-grandchildren for what their ancestors did? A student named Hannah raised her hand. But Professor, they would have done the same to us. If their empire had survived strong, they would have forgotten and moved on. They wouldn't have cared about justice. That's true, Juno agreed. But does that mean we should become like them? We remembered for 3,000 years. We prepared for this moment. But what happens after revenge? What kind of people do we want to be? On Admiral Hyagin's flagship, she received reports of Zytherian civilians evacuating military zones. They were terrified. Some expected humanity to destroy their cities, to murder their children, to do to them what was done to Earth's colonists. Sir, we have Zytherian children on the refugee ships, her communications officer reported. They're asking if we're going to kill them. Hyagin closed her eyes. She thought of her ancestor who died 3,000 years ago. That woman had been traveling with her daughter. A child who never got to grow up, never got to have children of her own. The family line had ended there, except in memory. Tell them, Hyagin said slowly, that humanity does not make war on children. Meanwhile, human special forces captured the Zytherian High Command. These were the leaders who ordered the attack on the Minarian colony. The ones who proved that the Zytherian Empire had learned nothing from history. Captain Miho stood guard as the prisoners were brought before human tribunals. Lawyers from across the galaxy watched. This was unprecedented. A war crimes trial for acts committed 3,000 years ago. The chief prosecutor was a human woman named Jun. She presented evidence that took weeks to review. Not just proof of the original massacre, but documents showing how the Zytherian government had deliberately erased it from history. How they had destroyed records. How they had punished anyone who tried to remember. They didn't just commit genocide, Jun argued. They tried to murder memory itself. They wanted the crime to disappear completely. The Zytherian defense attorney, surprisingly, was also human. His name was Taejin, and he argued for the young Zytherians who had surrendered. My clients were taught lies, Taejin said. Their government hid the truth from them. They are victims too. Victims of a system that preferred comfortable lies to uncomfortable truth. Ambassador Jinho attended the trials every day. He listened to testimony from both sides. He heard old Zytherian commanders try to justify the massacre. He heard young Zytherians weep when they learned what their empire had done. One young Zytherian officer named Kelric asked to speak. I didn't know, he said, his voice breaking. They taught us that humans were the aggressors. That we acted in self-defense. I believed them. I would have fought for them. But now I know the truth and I'm ashamed. I'm ashamed of my people. I'm ashamed of myself for not questioning sooner. Jinho watched this young alien cry. He felt something unexpected. Not satisfaction. Not joy. Just a deep, aching tiredness. That evening he spoke with President Daeho. We've won the war, Jinho said. But I'm not sure we're winning the peace. What do you mean? I mean, Jinho replied, that we remembered for 3,000 years. We preserved every name, every face, every story. We did this to honor the dead. But the dead can't tell us what they want now. They can't tell us if they want revenge or justice. We have to decide. Daeho nodded slowly. Then we decide to be better than our enemies. The decision was made. Humanity would not commit genocide. They would not become monsters to fight monsters. But they would demand something perhaps more difficult. They would force the Zytherians to remember. 5 years after the war ended, Ambassador Jinho stood once again before the Galactic Council. But this time he was not alone. Beside him stood a young Zytherian named Kelric, who now served as a teacher. The Zytherian Empire no longer exists, Jinho announced to the assembled representatives. It has been dissolved. War criminals have faced justice. But we did not destroy the Zytherian people. Kelric stepped forward nervously. He had spent the last 5 years studying human history, learning the names of the dead, understanding the magnitude of what his people had done. My species committed a terrible crime, Kelric said, his voice steady despite his fear. We killed 40 million humans. Then we tried to forget we did it. We taught our children lies. We erased the truth from our records. Humanity could have destroyed us completely. Instead they taught us to remember. The council chamber was silent. Everyone knew what humanity had demanded as the price of peace. Every Zytherian child now learned human history in school. They memorized the names of the dead. They studied what happened and why it was wrong. They visited memorials built from the wreckage of destroyed colony ships. Admiral Hyojin, now retired, worked on one such memorial. She carefully placed a piece of twisted metal from the soul's blessing into the structure. Beside her, young Zytherian students helped with the construction. "Why do we have to do this?" one young Zytherian asked. "I wasn't even born when this happened." Hyojin looked at the child gently. "Because if you don't remember, it will happen again. Your ancestors forgot that cruelty has consequences. They forgot that other species feel pain just like you do. We're making sure you never forget." On Earth, Professor Juno's classroom had changed. Now he taught both human and Zytherian students together. They sat side by side learning the same history. "Memory is not about hatred," Juno told them. "It's about understanding. When you forget terrible things, you're more likely to repeat them. When you remember, you can choose to be better." A human student named Hannah raised her hand. "But Professor, my great-great-grandmother died in the massacre. How am I supposed to sit next to Zytherians and not be angry?" Juno nodded. "You have every right to be angry. But ask yourself what your ancestor would want. Would she want you to kill innocent people? Or would she want you to make sure this never happens to anyone else?" The Galactic Council passed new laws based on humanity's demands. Every species now had to maintain complete historical archives. War crimes could never expire no matter how much time passed. Genocide would be remembered forever. Some species complained. The Delphian representative spoke up. "This is unreasonable. You're asking us to remember things that happened thousands of years ago. Our people can't carry that burden." Jinho responded calmly. "Humanity carried that burden for 3,000 years. We never asked for it. It was forced upon us by those who thought they could commit atrocity and simply move on. Now the galaxy will learn what we learned. Memory is not optional. Justice is not limited by time." President Deho visited a special ceremony on the human colony world of New Hope. This was built on the exact coordinates where the colony ship Tomorrow's Child was supposed to land 3,000 years ago. Zytherian workers had helped build the colony. They worked alongside humans, planting trees, constructing buildings, creating the future that should have existed millennia ago. An elderly Zytherian approached Deho. His name was Vecker, and he had been a military commander during the war. He had surrendered when he learned the truth about the massacre. "President," Vecker said quietly, "I wanted to thank you." "Thank me?" Deho asked, surprised. "For what?" "For not making us the same kind of monsters we made ourselves," Vecker replied. "You could have destroyed us. Instead, you gave us a chance to be better. My grandchildren will grow up knowing the truth. They will be ashamed of what we did, but they will also know that humans showed us mercy when they didn't have to." Deho placed a hand on the old alien's shoulder. "We didn't do it for you. We did it for ourselves. We remembered for 3,000 years so we wouldn't become like those who hurt us." Back at the Galactic Council, Jinho prepared to deliver his final speech as ambassador. He was retiring, passing the role to someone younger. But first he had one last message. "The galaxy asked why humanity couldn't forget," he said. "Why we held on to pain for so long. Now you understand. We remembered not because we wanted revenge but because we refused to let evil be erased. We remembered so that 40 million deaths would mean something." He looked around the chamber at representatives from dozens of worlds. "Memory is our gift to the galaxy. It's also our warning. Commit atrocity and we will remember. Wait 1,000 years, wait 10,000 years. We will still remember. And eventually justice will come." Kelric stepped forward one last time. "And we Zytherians will remember too. We will teach our children what we did and why it was wrong. We will never forget the humans we killed. And we will spend the rest of our existence making sure it never happens again." The chamber remained silent for a long moment. Then, slowly, representatives from other worlds began to stand. Not in applause but in acknowledgement. They understood now. Humanity had changed the galaxy forever. On Earth, in the Grand Archive, children of many species sat together learning history. Human children. Zytherian children. Minarian children. All learning the same lessons. A young human girl named Minji, named after her ancestor who died 3,000 years ago, raised her hand. "Teacher, did we win?" Her teacher, a human named Yuna, smiled sadly. "We didn't win, Minji. We survived. And we made sure that survival meant something." What did it mean? It meant that we remembered. And in remembering, we made sure that the 40 million who died were never truly forgotten. Their names live on. Their stories live on. And because of that, the galaxy is a better place. Outside the archive, A memorial stretched as far as the eye could see. 40 million names carved in stone, glowing softly in the evening light. Human families walked among the names, touching them, remembering. And beside them walked Zytherian families, teaching their children, making sure the memory never died. Admiral Hyojin stood at her ancestor's name one last time before her own death. She had lived her entire life for this moment, for this justice. "We didn't forget," she whispered to the stone. "We promised we would remember, and we kept that promise. Now the whole galaxy remembers with us. Rest now. Your story is not forgotten. It will never be forgotten." Above, the stars shone bright. And somewhere among them, colony ships carrying humans and Zytherians together sailed toward new worlds, carrying the lessons of the past into the future. Humanity had spent 3,000 years preparing for revenge. In the end, they chose something harder. They chose to transform revenge into memory, memory into justice, and justice into a better galaxy for everyone. The war was over. The remembering would last forever. The end.